Yeah, I can never doubt myself, I know better. All of you critics be acting like you know better.
Nathan Rogers, I'm here today with Bubba McDaniels, Texas' own Bubba McDaniels. How are you doing today, man?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good.
Eating.
Bubba just got done weighing in for probably what will probably be his last MMA fight.
Definitely my last MMA fight. But you know, I don't think I'm gonna miss this part right here. But you know, I guess I should say that I won't miss the part that was about 10 minutes ago.
You know, for those of us that don't know you, tell us a little about who you are and kind of your background.
Name's Bubba McDaniel from Wichita Falls, Texas. Started fighting tough man contests 2002. Started MMA in 2004. Turned pro 05. 40 years old now. Bare knuckle, UFC, Bellator, Ultimate Fighter, King of the Cage. Everything you can think of other than Pride. That's the only one I didn't get to go to that I wanted to go to, but did about everything you can do in this sport and everything. Got to win in every place, except for BKFC right now. That's coming.
Man, being close to Oklahoma, I've heard stories about the strongman stuff in Oklahoma back in the day. I got friends of mine that came down, and Chuck Norris and all that stuff. You got any fun stories about strongman up there?
Nah, tough man was real. It was one of those things that I was one of those first people too, though, that walked in smoking cigarettes. I was smoking cigarettes going, yeah, because I was bouncing at the bars, beating up all the drunks. You know how it is. Think you go out there, and then I fight a guy that had been competing already a couple of times, and I got waxed first time right out the gate. As like I told everybody, I was like, it's like a curse. My first tough man fight I lost. My first amateur MMA fight I lost. You know, my first kickboxing match I lost. My first BKFC fight I lost. I'm like a first-time loser for everything. It feels like. Then I get my little groove on right there. But nah, man, back in the day, it was literally that was our MMA until I saw somebody training MMA, and I was like, how can I do this? Let me join you. You know, and they were just like, we fucking hate you. Get out of here. They beat the shit out of me. You know what I mean? It's like, and I just had to take my lumps and go with it, man. And eventually they were like, all right, motherfucker, you're not going nowhere. Let's come on over here. Let me show you how to do this.
You know, I talked to a lot of people about the generations of MMA. Mm-hmm. I mean, you have the first generation, which is definitely the combat sport versus combat sport. You have the second generation, which you kind of fall into, which becomes a little bit more refined, where you realize you have to do a couple of big things to do that. You have the third generation, which is kind of the George St. Pierre generation, where you kind of had, once again, those individual sports that really kind of stuck out with a few add-ons to it.
I called everybody, though, on that generation tough noobs. They were the guys that came in from watching Tough afterwards.
Okay.
They weren't doing it before that. That first Stephen Bonner, Forrest Griffin, we had a big surge when that happened, obviously. And I call those the tough noob era. But yeah, that is an era, and it's all in its own, all itself too, though.
So now you've got the era that you brought up, which is this very well-rounded fighter, which is what we're starting to see in the UFC now, a lot of that. What does it mean to you to be able to say, you know what, I've helped build and mold what MMA has become to this day?
You know, it's not necessarily that it was that I did it on a big scale, but in the Texas-Oklahoma region and everything like that, I definitely was fighting everybody that needed to be fought. I fought Gerald Harris when he was strictly the wrestler guy. You know, I fought a lot of different guys that had different styles and things like that. I fought a Brandon McDowell. He was 30-13, and I was a whole 3-1 when we fought. You know what I mean? Like, you got out there and you fought. This is I'll say this. Here's my biggest problem with the people that are today, though. They're really good fighters. They're fighters that would have beat 99% of the people that were competing in even the O's, you know what I mean, all the way through. But they're scared to fight. They're scared to have a record. Oh, I got a blemish, something like that, because they're not going to make it to the UFC, anything like that. I fought 8 times in 11 months when I first turned pro, because you fight. You're a fighter, you're fighting. That's how I put food on the table. I didn't even have another job other than that. You know, like if I did, it was like, fuck you, I'm going to take another fight. I'm getting out of here. Fuck you. I didn't like the way you did that. You know, I was a young kid, but the thing is, though, is we had a fire. We had a different fire than they have these days. But I'll say this too, though, is the well-roundedness of these kids that are coming up, that started off wrestling, started off doing jiu-jitsu, and picking up boxing, kickboxing, however it is in there. Because striking is obviously the one you want to pick up last. And to watch these kids actually get molded into this era that they're coming into. Like, we've got kids that are 12, 13 years old. They're going to be a whole new resurgence of everything, that are just like trying crazy stuff against adults right now in sessions and classes and things. And you watch it and you're like, wow, like that's going to be something one day.
I mean, it's kind of like on a smaller scale when you kind of look at what Eddie Bravo did to the jiu-jitsu circuit.
There you go.
where your Gracie Jiu-Jitsu and your Mikado and stuff like that, they really focus on chokes and arms and stuff like that, but it really ignored the bottom half of the body. And Eddie Bravo comes in and says, hey, you know what, maybe we should pay attention to that.
Right.
And kind of reinvented what jiu-jitsu was.
I'll say this, and don't get me wrong, I hate leg locks. Oh my God, I hate leg locks. And it's one of those things, I had an Eddie Bravo guy snap my leg over for me. He was nice about it, you know what I mean? But at the same time, like just grabbed it up, popped it over for me, and I was like, well, that's over, I guess, you know what I mean? And as I told him, I was like, don't feel like we're even fighting right there in a grappling tournament. It's just like, oh yeah, okay, you broke my leg and I'm in trouble. Okay, cool. You know what I mean? Like, but it's the same time too, though. If you think about it from a fight aspect, my leg broke. How am I supposed to fight? You know what I mean? My leg, I can't stand up on it. How am I supposed to fight? Like that's a whole new reinvention right there, and you got to pay attention to that stuff. Even in combat sports, the way I've always thought about it is, could you have killed me? Could I have killed you? Where is that at? And that's what it really come down to. Back then, whenever we first started out, that's what a lot of people were like, do y'all fight to the death? Like, no, idiot. But at the same time, like that's the taboo-ness of what it was. Like if you weren't really okay with knowing you could possibly die or really have a bad injury, something like that, every time you go in there, this is not for you. You know, that's the difference in the eras at that point too, though.
So, you know, obviously the older generation is kind of going back to the roots. Tell me a little bit about the transition and doing the bare knuckle. You know, obviously it takes away a lot of those tools that you've learned through the years, but it lets you to do what you want to be able to do.
That's the thing. Here's what I'm going to say. Bare knuckle is a lot easier to train for than an MMA fight is. Because then my back doesn't have to come into play being as hurt as it is and everything most of the time. All these other injuries that I've accumulated through it from MMA over the time don't really bother me as much when I'm just having to get in the box and do a little dirty boxing. Don't get me wrong. It was as fast and as fun as a street fight and as I've ever been in. Like I thought it was fantastic. I had a great time with it. And I do believe that it is a way for us older fellas to be able to go, hey, I can still fight a little bit more. You know what I mean? If you're a young person in that, you're getting all that scar tissue and damage and getting those big shots, you know what I mean, with bare fists and everything, you're probably going to have a short career if you start off there. But at the same time, for us older guys, the wear and tear is there. Might as well just finish it off on our own terms is the way I feel. I want to finish on my own terms. So if I don't, it's one of those like, Like I feel like I told everybody whenever I had my last MMA fight in 2018, I didn't know that was my last one. I didn't know that was I didn't know. It was a good fight. Everything went well. It was a great show. I had a good time. But I didn't know I was finishing. You know what I mean? And I've had 5 years since then. So just trying to get it done, close that door on it.
So, man, as somebody that's been there, seen that, tell me, what is your favorite memory from combat sports up to this point?
Winning in Mandalay Bay for my tough finale. Had a brother that got out of prison that I hadn't seen since I was little. He's younger than me. Had a bunch of my family there. Had a lot of adopted family there, pretty much. Like everybody that paid attention to that, and I had a friend die a month earlier. Everybody that paid attention to that, I got to tribute him. I got to win. I got to see everybody. I had all my real friends come through, and actually in Vegas. And I got to party that night with my people that were my people after winning on the biggest stage in the world. And that right there, I'm going to tell you what, if anybody ever tells you that your dreams aren't worth it, I'm going to tell them they're a liar. Because that one night is still in my mind. Every time I think about it, I can vividly remember so many different details.
And that's awesome, man. That's great to hear. Now, talking a little bit about Tough. So I got a lot of good friends of mine that came from the first generations of Tough.
Yeah. Shout out Aaron McKenzie right now, by the way. Yeah.
A lot of good friends of mine that came from the first few generations of Tough.
Right.
Obviously, Tough has turned into something entirely different now.
Yeah.
What does it mean to you to be brought up with names like Bonner and Forrest Griffin and Zach Cummings and Roy Nelson and all those guys that came through the ranks of the tough circuit?
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that I was supposed to be on Tough 11. I got told, I think it was 10 days out that I wasn't coming anymore. Had a record, had an arrest happen, things like that. Then it was Tough 13. Went over for that one, tried out for that one, and they were doing 85 and 70, and then they were like, well, we're going to do 70. And I was like, well, I'm out, because they just changed it up at the last minute. They were like, can you make 70? They're like, can you make 70? I was like, there's no damn way I'm making 70. You're high as a kite. And waited it out for the next one and got on the next season. My interview on that, I walked in, they're like, we know you, right? I've seen you before. I was like, you fucking love me. He goes, you're in, let's go. And that was it, you know what I mean? Like that was to the point where they had seen me a couple of times, already wanted me on, and I was supposed to be there before. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things. Like I feel like a lot of different casts I'm kind of like tied into a little bit, and then you got people that are coming back and forth, and you got like even Kelvin and Uriah retiring and all these things, and Zach just recently retiring, like you talk about. I care a lot about these people. I care about, like, we lived in a house for that little bit of time, but that's something that, 99.99999% of the world will never even understand what it's like to be there. You know, and we got this journey that we got to take together. Even if we were on opposite teams, things like that, we were all still there. And it was together. And it's one of those things, like, you bring up a name, it's like, oh, I know who that is. You know what I mean? I remember what he was doing on this day and that and the other. It's real weird that I slept a lot of the time, and they all laugh because I slept so much, but I got so much airtime. But I was cutting weight. I cut weight. I made weight 4 times in 5 weeks. So it's one of those, like, I was just there and trying to make weight and survive. But at the same time, like, once it was over, everything was ingrained in my memory. You know what I mean? Like, this is one of those, like, I'm like, this will never happen again. You know, never happen again. Even though I did get called for the comeback season at 170. I told y'all I can't make 170. Either way.
What does it feel? How does it feel to you to kind of see that avenue lost for these upcoming fighters? I mean, it's still there. I know people have been on the last couple of seasons, but it's not. These guys aren't coming in and making an impact anymore.
It's diluted. It's very diluted now. The fighters of my season every one of us were fucking fighters. We cared about the time and being somebody, but we were fucking fighters first. There's a lot of people that haven't been that. They've been a fucking joke. They've been this. They're coming off of that. Their pussy hurts all the time. You know what I mean? Shit like that. Like, it's so diluted now. It sucks, man. But at the same time, like, I still support people. Like I say, Aaron McKenzie this season right now. You know what I'm saying? Like, even though, like I say, his fight didn't go his way and everything, like, that's my dude. We're tied through that now. He knows the process now. We're tied. I talked to him a little bit not too long ago about it, and I didn't let him obviously get into some details, and he wasn't going to get into them anyway. He still got that $5 million thing over his head. I ain't doing it either. That was one thing. I was like, no, you're not getting that out of me, you know. But I mean, like, we are tied in again now. Like, even though me and Aaron McKenzie have only trained together a handful of times, seen each other a few times, I love the dude to death, we're tied differently now, even though I don't know him on a real personal level. You know what I'm saying? Like, but at the same time, I love the dude. Every time I'm around him, he's so fun to be around.
So I feel like you're going to have an opinion about this one, so that's what I've got to ask you.
Fuck Conor McGregor if that's what you're coming to.
Well, you've seen a transition into the promotion of the sport. Mm-hmm. You now see the guys rising to the top, being the guys with the big mouths that really have that personality that sticks out. Whether it's Conor McGregor, whether it's Colby Covington, whether it's these guys that are getting this extra airtime. How do you feel about that? I mean, this is something that I've talked to fighters about a long time, is having that fact that it's something that separates you from everybody else.
As long as you can back it up, people will pay to see it. But if you're that guy just talking shit and getting your ass whipped a lot, you know what I mean? Like, what the fuck are you doing it for? Like, don't get me wrong. Conor McGregor talked himself into a lot of things. Here's the thing, though. How many fights has he won lately?
None.
You get what I'm saying? Mm. And he's still talking. He's still acting like he's the big cheese, this, that, and the other. It's disgusting. Like, you're not that fucking guy anymore. You want to be that guy, but you're a fat rapist piece of shit. You know what I mean?
But I mean, at this point, he's become a PR genius. Every time somebody stops talking about him, he goes and tweets something ridiculous, and all of a sudden he's on every MMA podcast. Everybody's talking about him again. He's made sure he stays relevant for the 4 years he hasn't fought.
I'm going to say this. If I was a guy that didn't have to fight anymore and make a bunch of money like that, I'd probably do it too. But you're still a fuck for it.
All right, I got one last question for you. Post-retirement, you've already kind of started that journey post-retirement. What is your plan? What are you up to? What are your goals?
I want to be a part of this show. I want this show to flourish. And I want to be able to have something that we can help other fighters come up through. I want to help other fighters. I want people to say that we took care of them too. And, you know, the next generations of fighters need homes to go to. They need places to go to that they know that they're safe at, things like that. Like another fighter that used to fight is now a promoter, things like that, helping out. That kind of stuff matters to other fighters. Like, fighters get taken care of by fighters. They don't get taken care of by promoters. So that's my plan.
Something that I have to ask everybody, especially somebody that's been around the sport for a long time. If you were to give one or two pieces of advice to somebody that is in their early 20s, that is trying to build a career in this sport, what is those couple little pieces of advice you give them?
One's about management. Don't sign with the first management that is trying to come after you because they're trying to come after you for a reason. Sign with the ones that can do the most for you. Now, on top of that, if somebody else can do more for you, don't feel obligated to the other management team. I'm going to tell you like this. Loyalty is for dogs, and they will use you like a dog if you are that loyal. I'm going to tell you like this. I had opportunities to do other things and make a lot more money and things like that, and I didn't do it because I was loyal. Shoulda, coulda, wouldas, I should have done that. I'm a person that has morals of such and things like that I stay with people that I said I would stay with. But it didn't do me any justice in the long run. They're not a part of my life anymore. I don't care to be a part of their life anymore. And I'm over here doing my own thing still, and I didn't get anything that I really wanted from the management side of things like that. That's number one. Number two is always, like I was saying, be true to yourself right there. No matter what it is. If you feel it's wrong, it's wrong. You know what I mean? If you think that you shouldn't be doing it, don't do it. You know what I mean? Pay your fucking dues. And make sure that you're in the gym working harder than any other motherfucker out there, or you don't deserve to be anywhere.
Awesome. Well, Bubba, I thank you for sitting down with me, man. It's a pleasure to sit down and chat with you. I look forward to seeing your fight tomorrow night, even though it's probably going to air after your fight tomorrow night. But it's a pleasure to get to know you. Thanks for sitting down with me, and I hope we can do this again.
My man, appreciate you. Thank you, man.